the Automio story so far, ominous. So I'm going to take you back a few years to London in the 1980s, and this is important for just context about kind of where the idea for Automio came from. All of this kind of stuff going on, it's a long time ago. While that was happening, this guy here, Dennis King, was in London on his OE. Dennis and Claudia are the founders of our company, Automio. While Dennis was in London, he came across document automation for the first time. You can kind of imagine it was fairly in its infancy and what it was like. But Dennis had this idea that he wanted to basically draw flow diagrams of the way that he thinks, the decisions he makes, the content he includes in legal documents when he drafts them, because his theory was that actually they're pretty much the same every time, and there's no reason why I can't map that out. One of our company relics is a 250-page hand-drawn will flow that Dennis did. But what he wanted to do was basically hand-draw those, stick them in the computer, and have the computer take the logic from the flow and the content and interview them, and based on the interview and how it was answered, produce legal documents. So that was kind of the infancy of what Automio was. It's taken a long time from London in the early 1980s to get where we are today, for a number of reasons. Dennis ran a very busy practice, and technically they took a long time to find the right people that could actually build the software for them. When I was growing up, because I grew up with Claudia and Dennis, and Dennis was a bit of a father figure. Claudia and I went to Pony Club together, very middle class kind of upbringing. They had a number plate on their car which was Gold Bar, and I just thought it was because they were rich, because he was a prominent provincial lawyer, but actually it stood for generation of legal documents by algorithmic logic, right? Response rather. So even way back then, Dennis was thinking about how this particular idea could actually really help them in their legal practice. So Claudia, really inspirational person, childhood friend. We always thought that we'd practice law together. By the time I decided to return from London, Claudia was pretty close to launching Automio. She had some hugely difficult decisions to make. She sold her legal practice. She had to make all of her staff redundant so that they could go off and or she could sell her practice. They all got jobs, and they ran an amazing process to make sure that they did. But some really, really difficult decisions to make. Three of us carried on from the firm. I was one of them. Claudia said to me, "Well, do you want to join me on this kind of adventure?" And I was back home and thought, well, I have a job, so I may as well do it. So that was 18 months ago. We launched the first commercial product just over 12 months ago. And this is it. So, these are product shots of it. So, the marketing messages, we say, Automio, or with Automio, lawyers use what we call lawyer bots. So you can see the first part of it, which is the flow diagram in the background there. And the idea is that lawyer bots, or software robots, can perform these tasks for you. So lawyers use these bots to create innovative products and services that they can use internally to kind of speed up their production of complete documentation and advice and all that sort of stuff. But more personally, for me, more excitingly, they can actually use them to interact with their customers. And that was originally what Claudia wanted to do with their legal practice, something called Legal Beagle, which was an online legal services business. And they really they needed to make it more efficient internally, but actually they wanted to sell legal documents online as self-service products. They started building the software to do it. They started building it for them to use themselves. But actually along that journey found that the greater project was actually taking this software to market and taking it to small and medium-sized law firms and actually enabling them to take their IP and a little bit in the way that eBay did, or Trade in New Zealand did with people's stuff in their garages, right? All of a sudden they had all of the stuff that they could sell. And kind of our base principle, that's what we're trying to do with professional services and professional IP. For you guys to be able to go and get your IP wherever you've got it stored. Create these automations that allow you to kind of capture the way that you think, you respond, and how you would give advice or give draft documentations as if you were there, but make them available 24 hours without you kind of having to work any harder, without having to import any more of your own time into it. So I said we've been out for 12 months. So this is what we looked like 12 months ago. We had 30 early adopters, supporters who sort of signed up without really knowing what it was, but wanted to be part of it. A number of them are still with us. There were 7 team members, so a pretty small team, and we had lots to learn. We had our first birthday in the middle of June. We actually had the party the other day. So in 12 months, we've gone from 30 users. We now have over 2,100 users around the world. We have 134 law firms and partners. There's 443 of these things we call lawyer bots on the platform. So most of that is client stuff. Over 10,000 documents have been created on the platform. We now have 14 team members, and we have our head office, or HQ if you like, in New Plymouth in New Zealand, which is where I spend about half of my time when I'm not travelling. We have an office in Sydney now, where Mike is based, and our development team, which is led by one of our 2 founding devs, Matt and Mike. Mike is in, we call him Dev Mike, because it can be quite confusing. Dev Mike is in Sofia with 2 other developers there. We've raised a fair amount of money, a fair amount of capital, so we've got a raise over just under 2 million in outside investment, and we still have an awful lot to learn. This is a little bit a few weeks old, but this is kind of what the spread of users looks like. Bit of a cluster around here in New Zealand, a fair bit of activity in Sydney. It kind of spreads across the world, and it's for somebody who came from kind of a legal background and to be involved in a company that's doing this kind of stuff, which is pretty far out, and having clients, all over the world doing really interesting stuff. So exciting for us. It comes with its own problems, obviously completely different time zones and all that kind of stuff, but every time we seem to take a step forward, the price of progress is more and increasingly complicated issues, which is a really good thing. So our customers, if I sort of try and explain who they are and what we target when we go out to try and work with people. I personally like to work with people or firms who want to work with us. And I know that sounds a little bit backwards, but actually for a company like ours, which is quite small, one of the harder parts of my job is actually making calls on leads, deciding whether or not we actually pursue a big corporate or whether we pursue some smaller firms that we know are nimble and ready to make decisions and can come on board with us and really use the software and use it fast. So small and medium-sized law firms. As much as it pains me to say, we've had a lot of success in Australia compared to New Zealand. Coming back to Brisbane was a bit of a return to where we had a lot of success at Automio last year, which was a really big turning point for us. Of course, you do all this work, and Automio we say is kind of 30 years old, but actually more like the last 4 years have been really hard work in development, and I've turned up at the, well, they call it the glory moment. Really what it was that the roles of CEO, CTO, COO were taken, so they kind of looked at me around the table and said, you must be the sales guy, which is kind of how these sort of startup businesses work. But yeah, it's about making those kind of hard decisions about what sorts of leads you pursue. So we're small and medium. We have some in-house teams. In-house teams particularly interested in a couple of features that I'll show you in a minute, and a few other random kind of people as well, because we've gone out and created a product that's not actually legal specific at all. It basically will produce whatever you tell it to produce in terms of an output, or a Word document output at the other end. So it doesn't have to be a legal document, it just happens to be very, very good at doing that. So we have a wedding planner, some hotels, some really different kind of stuff on there. Really hard in our role as well to stay focused on law firms. We get pulled in all sorts of directions by our advisors to say, well, why don't you try this, why don't you try that? But actually, to run a successful sales team when it's really small, you've got to be really disciplined and try and keep as close to what your kind of business model is. This is a historic Automio location in Brisbane. Challenges, and we've had a lot of them, and we continue to have them, and challenges are really good. It's actually kind of a good stock photo anyway, because it looks quite challenging to get in there, but that's not what it's about. It's a parking lot opposite the core. Yeah. And when we launched, one of the things that we didn't do right was our pricing. And we launched as a pure software as a service model. So we had really, really low cost individual subscriptions, and we thought that our customers would kind of take them up one by one, and if they were a big firm, they'd just take a whole handful of them, and away they'd go. And it didn't work like that at all. So this is a historical location, because in the hour and a half that I was parked in there, I made $49.50, and it cost me $80 to park. So that was one of those things that really kind of cemented in our minds that perhaps our cost of sales don't quite match the sales model. So one of the big changes that we made sort of close to this time was that we listened to our customers, as we always do, and they told us they wanted to be charged differently, and they wanted the service to be delivered differently. So now on average we probably charge, well, our pricing is probably 500 times more than that, which sounds a lot, but it's more like sort of 10,000-ish for a medium-sized firm. And for that, they get a massive amount of value. And it turns out that that's what law firms want to pay. They want to come to us and get a huge amount of value. They want it to be really hands-off as possible. And to deliver that, you need to charge more. And so that's what we do. In the great scheme of things, for what they get, for the end product, it's incredibly, incredibly good value. So a couple of other challenges that we face, and we still face. When you launch a product, market validation is a real issue. So we found this particularly with law firms. They want to know what everyone else is doing, and we know that they want to know that, because as soon as somebody that they know does it, then all of a sudden they're really interested, and it's completely natural. But when you start a business, it's really difficult to try and get these first firms, these first people on, these early adopters, this kind of people. So we're very thankful to the customers that came on in the early days with really, I mean, it still is early days, but the ones that came on with really no proof of product at all, other than me sitting in there telling them that it was great. We've got a few customers in the room actually. I should have done hands up for who are customers here. We've got some new ones. There you go, yay. Signed up yesterday. Very good.
Just in time.
Yeah, and we do a lot of online marketing, a lot of really good content. We really put ourselves out there. We try and do as much of this kind of stuff as we can. We try and we try and provide really useful kind of help for people who are thinking about this innovation and all that sort of stuff. When you do that, one of the interesting things you get is trolls. You get a lot of trolls. We get a lot of people saying really awful stuff to us. Probably my favourite was a lawyer who told us that he thought we were way too smug, and then we looked it up, and in the about him section, about the firm section, or who are we, it was just a picture of him.
That's it?
And that was it. And I thought maybe you'd know. What's next? So we have a commercial product and it's great, but we're really about taking that and really taking it to the next level. This is another great innovative New Zealand company. We have a space program in New Zealand. It's called Rocket Labs, a guy called Peter Beck, hugely successful company. Also a great stock photo for this particular slide, but we have a major development coming out over the weekend, so a completely new e-commerce platform, a huge range of upgrades to the interface, to how it works, to where things are placed, a huge range of new formatting functions, mostly based on what our customers have told us over the last 12 months, so we're really reactive to that. And some really big kind of lofty ideas about what we want our platform to be. We create Word documents at the moment. It's really more about collecting data and what you do with it. And it'll kind of make more sense when I do a quick kind of product demo, but it's about allowing a huge amount of flexibility for you to kind of decide what your client interactions are, and enabling that as kind of fast as we can. So as I say, I've learned a lot, and I wanted to give some as much as I could, some kind of examples of what I've learned over the last 12 months and how you could sort of apply them yourselves. The first one's really important for when we come and try and see you. Let us in the door. It's really interesting when at home where we've struggled. We know that we've got a really great product, and we're out there, and not just at home, but we keep getting told by people all over the world it's great. But a lot of people don't want to talk to us about it, which is really interesting when everyone's kind of talking about innovation and what's next. But we still find it really difficult to get through doors, and we can do really short, succinct demos and all that kind of stuff. But you've got to be open to the new ideas and changing, and that goes for me as much as anything else. I have a completely non-technical background. I knew nothing about technology really before I started working for Automio, so I had to be open to new ideas and still do. Cost is a factor, cost in terms of money and time still for people, but we try and encourage as much as we can, and we're the same, to do what we can with what we've got. So if we want to be innovative, think, what can a budget look like? What can we do? What can we do to start at a really kind of easy level? Always good to look at your competition. Particularly in New Zealand, we've had a couple of really great wins in the last couple of months with firms and businesses that have come on board and have noticed a real change in attitude from a lot of people as well based on that. So if your competitors are doing something and they're doing it well, it's probably something you should be thinking about. We do the same. We're constantly looking at what our technology partners, or competitors if you like, are doing, and trying to work out how we can do it better, or whether they've kind of cottoned on to what we're thinking. The fourth one kind of goes for anything. Like, communication is so important, and a lot of what we do is really, really difficult for a number of reasons. If you've started your own business, you'll understand you can't fix anything unless you tell people about it. So we just try and encourage our clients as much as our team to be honest and open, talk about what your problems are. People aren't going to steal your ideas. They're going to want to help you. They want to fix things if it's for the greater good. And the last one was actually my New Year's resolution for if I didn't understand something, I'd tell people I didn't. And it sounds quite simple. It's actually a really difficult thing to get into doing, but it's hugely powerful. So I'm working in an industry when, particularly when they start talking about the technical stuff, I have no idea what they're talking about. I can never remember what code our software is written in, for instance, which I think I get asked from time to time, but I can never remember the explanation because it's a little technical. But if you don't understand, just ask. And part of your training as a lawyer, right, you have a really good meter for when you know that something's not quite right. You know, I certainly do. So if I'm told something that I don't understand or don't know it's quite right, you know, ask questions, tell them you don't understand it. Hugely powerful thing. The other thing is, because I travel so much, the other resolution was to not eat fried potato things because you seem to roll back into town after a few weeks on the road and it's not good. Every restaurant meal has chips. I'm going to do a quick product demo. So, I mean, we're a cloud software, a web-based application, as you'd expect. Don't get used to this. It's going. The robot's gone.
I like the robot.
Gets replaced over the weekend. So we're really excited about it. Comes with a whole lot of new, more user-friendly things for our customers. This is my experience if I was a subscriber. So I've logged into my dashboard. Each of these tiles represents a document that's had automation work done to it, a document or a piece of advice, I should say. So you choose your own images, you choose your own logo, looks and feels like your own kind of platform, really easy to do. This is just a selection of stuff that I've done. There's a range of documents in there, doesn't really matter what they are. I'm going to show you because most of the stuff that's on there is client stuff, so I have no idea what it is. I mean, it's not in this login, obviously. So I'm going to show you a confidentiality agreement because we kind of all know what that is. But more importantly, for a demo, it's nothing short. But it has some good examples in it. So I'll show you the interview creating a document output, and then I will show you the automation tool, the kind of more exciting thing, and then we can have a look at what a few of our customers are doing as well. So I tell it that I want to create one of these things. This is pretty similar to what it feels like on your website, although it's presented slightly differently. Some information here about this particular document, doesn't matter what it is because it's totally customizable, you can say whatever you like. Tell it that I want to run the interview, and it's just going to start asking me questions. So again, it doesn't really matter what the questions are. I've already typed responses in here. It remembers the last thing I told it, which is great because we can do it faster, but type responses of some type. Checkbox options which determine drafting as well as the questions that follow. So the idea of the automation is to only ask you the questions it needs to ask you and only ask you the right questions. So a good example is if this was a will automation and this question was, do you have any children? And you said no, you have quite different questions that follow and quite different drafting of the document than if you said yes. We've used that power to build things like an AML data collection interview. So when I was in London, we used to do this thing, we would send out a 50-page PDF to people and ask them to fill it out, and they never would. Because you had to kind of, you had to make allowances for any possible situation. Whereas with something like this, if it's a really basic situation, it might get asked a dozen questions. If it's a complex situation, it might be twice that, but it only importantly asks you the stuff that it needs to know. So some more type responses, a checkbox, and then run out of questions. Tell it I'm finished. Really fast, it's emailed me a copy of the Word document, so it's in the bag. And I can also download it on screen, and it's just an ordinary Word document that you can then take and do whatever you do with ordinary Word documents. Importantly, formatting whatever your firm's style is, so it's your IP as well as your own style. But we can see what it's done. It's populated these things, got a nice little logo in there, and we gave it that information, built those clauses, made some selections for checkbox responses as it went through, and then built the signature box as well. So that's a really basic example, but it's still a good one. It's still a good example for of a document that might have taken me half an hour to draft if I was a lawyer and I had a good precedent, but I can do it in like 2 or 3 minutes, and I know it's right, and the formatting is perfect, and it can go out the door happy days. There is no limit to the complexity of the logic automation that you can build. So document automation is a sort of a spectrum, and interestingly, sometimes where people have been in and already tried or successfully sold automation products to potential customers, it's actually worse for us than if they haven't done anything, because they've had the experience where they've ended up with a form filler that doesn't really help them, because it doesn't create a dynamic document. It doesn't actually draft something as if you'd had time to do it yourself and you built bespoke clauses and done that kind of stuff. We're about as far up the other end as you can get in terms of the bespoke type of automation that you can build. So time for something a little bit more exciting in terms of the platform. I mean, we've tried to build something that's modern and good to look at and feels nice to work with, which no reason lawyers shouldn't enjoy the software they work with as well. This is the automation that sits behind that confidentiality agreement. This is Dennis's dream. It's the automation. It's a basic automation, but the theory goes that, as I say, there's no limit to the complexity. You can go left to right or up and down as far as you want to go. Very briefly, how does it work? Every flow starts with a single point, and literally if you were sitting there on a piece of paper mapping out what you think about your logic, this is how you do it. So coloured points are questions and answers that form the interview. And there was that question there, is the counterparty a person or a company? That's what that looks like in the automation. So we're giving it 2 options, and based on the responses it branches out either way. Really important for us, although we offer a huge amount of consultative help, really important for us that actually it's about us teaching our customers how to do this themselves, because ultimately we really want the power of the automation to be in the hands of people who have the IP and knowledge, because that's where the real scalability is for us, and that's how we have most impact on the world, and that's what we want to do. So opened up the authoring tools here, and there's not many of them, but it's more about understanding what each of these do, and then building the kind of complexity into your automation from there. Person, company, if I wanted to add another option there, I just tell it I want another answer. It builds me a branch. So if I was drawing it on a piece of paper, I could go in and type something like trust there. And because it's a live software, if I went back into the automation that we just ran, it would now ask me whether the counterparty was a person, company, or a trust. One of the biggest pieces of feedback we kind of get from people is that actually, where they have had automations built that are useful, when they want changes made, it's way too hard, because A, they've got to go back to consultants to do it most of the time, so it's expensive. B, often those consultants aren't lawyers, so the process is really difficult. We have a team of people who build these, and they are lawyers, or lawyers, ex-lawyers, or legal executives, so they understand legal nuance, which is really important, because it's really difficult to kind of translate that stuff that people don't think matters is actually really important. That's the whole point. So once you branch off, so that you don't have to replicate all of the logic that follows, because we know that in a legal document, while part of it is will change, a lot of it remains the same. So we use these things called jump points, where you can get to the end of a line of logic and then skip to somewhere else in the flow. I always get this wrong. choose your own adventure. We call it something different at home. Usually I say pick a path novel and everyone's like, what's that? So choose your own adventure, end of the path and skip up, carry on left to right. It makes it really simple and streamlined. People usually then ask me, where's the document? And the answer is there is no document. Because the text of the document itself lives in the flow as part of the logic. And that's what gives it its real power. So we're not constrained at all by the format of a linear kind of Word document. You're breaking out parts of the Word document itself and including it as the logic falls. So here's an example of, we've come along here and we need a parties clause for a natural person, right? So we've cut and pasted that out of a Word document, and our builders work with kind of 2 screens and they cut and paste like that. This is a really basic, but it can be as big as it needs to be. The dark squares with words behind them, they're these things here, little green tokens. Click on them, they'll appear there, or drag and drop. They're the variables that we don't know what they are until we run the interview itself. That's all I usually show people of the authoring tool. I think because we are probably interested to see a complex one. I'll show you what a will looks like, can look like. Just to sort of prove the point that that you can build some hugely complex stuff. So, a really, really powerful automation. And it looks complex, and it is complex, but once you've built it once. This is essentially a piece of code, but you haven't had to write it, you've drawn it as a picture. If you want to make changes to it, just get in there and do it. So yeah, we've seen some fantastic stuff that people have. They're actually quite beautiful. And one of the interesting things about it as well is that people build flows to suit their personalities. So I'm an institutionalized corporate lawyer, so whenever I do one, I always think, what are all of the possible questions I could ask, and I do them in a big colourful line, and then start building parts of the actual document itself. Somebody else might interweave those as the flow. The questions or the client-facing aspect of it will be exactly the same. So kind of suits the personalities as well, which was a side effect that just sort of happens to be. I've got a few minutes left before we want to start with some questions. So, as I said earlier, use cases. People use it internally, but people also do really cool stuff like put it on their websites and use it to interact with their clients. So this is one of our really, really early clients, Jessica Kenny from Kenny Legal. She has something on here which is actually was quite groundbreaking at the time. And what this first thing here is it's not a legal document, but it's an interview that gives a piece of advice, and the advice is what you should be thinking about in terms of your legals for your business. So it'll ask you a bunch of questions and tell you the things that you might be missing. This is a lead generation tool, something you can stick on your website, something you can email to new clients, something you can market, all that sort of stuff. She also has some documents on here that she sells as self-service products. So we power everything that sits behind this. It remains in her URL. If I press buy there, it gives me an option to buy it. I'm logged in as myself with my credit card, so I won't buy it. We had a bit of an issue the day that this was released some time ago, and I was on a day of demos, and I spent a lot of time. But if I press buy, it would start the interview there. If I wasn't logged in as myself, it would ask for some credit card and other details, and then start the interview. New Zealand's former Solicitor General, a guy called Michael here in QC, runs an online dispute resolution platform called Coda. He sells a couple of automations that are actually owned by us. So there's this whole other side to the platform, which is about IP sharing amongst practitioners. So the ability for you to take something from someone else that they don't have and on-sell it. This is what Mike's doing here. Same sort of thing. We're powering this. pops up on his screen. He does some really interesting stuff here. This is a platform where he gets people in there, they do this documentation. All this requires independent advice, so then they then go off and get organise meetings with the lawyers and do all sorts of interesting stuff there, as well as his practice as a barrister. And just one further example of what one of our customers is doing, a guy called Craig Patton in a place called Dunedin in New Zealand. So that is a bit of our story, a pretty quick run through of the platform.